What is your role in the EURenOmics project?
Okay, I am a partner of the Work Package 5 and I work with Dr. Remuzzi, Giuseppe Remuzzi, who is the leader of the Work Package 5 that is dedicated to the study of complement-related diseases.
What are complement-related diseases?
Complement-related diseases are very complex because the complement system is complex. It's made by more than 40 different proteins. It's a system that is very important for our body to defend against microbes. And so when it works properly, it is very important because defend against infections. But sometimes due to genetic abnormalities or to acquired abnormalities, that means antibodies that in some way alter the balance between the activation and the regulation of this system, there is an activation of the complement on our own body. And this may cause a number of diseases, and particularly we are interested in kidney diseases that are related to this altered regulation of complement. So in these patients, the complement does not only attack microbes, but also attack the kidney.
How many people are affected by these diseases?
Complement-related diseases in the kidney are rare diseases. There are different groups of diseases. So there are atypical hemolytic uremic syndrome, and the prevalence of this disease is 1 patient over 1 million persons, so it's a very rare disease. The other group of diseases that are complement related are named C3 glomerulopathies, and again they are rare diseases with a prevalence of about 1 case over 100,000 persons. So we are talking about very rare diseases.
What is the role of genetic research for complement-related diseases?
The role of genetics is very important because, for instance, in one of these diseases that is atypical hemolytic uremic syndrome, 70% of patients carry mutation in complement genes. And depending on the gene involved and on the type of mutation, there is a different disease course, a different response to therapies, and also a different risk of recurrence of the disease in a kidney transplant. And this is very important because many of these patients develop end-stage renal disease. They need dialysis, and the only way to have a good quality of life is to have a transplant. So the genetics help to predict the risk of having a kidney transplant that will undergo a recurrence. And so genetics is very important for diagnosis and for prognosis.
What else is needed to help these patients?
Genetics is a very powerful tool. Now that we are going to sequence many genes in a few time, we have a lot of information. But genetics is just the first step. Before telling anything definitive to the clinician and to the patients, we need to do functional studies and to go back to the cells and to the biologist. So the genetics does not stand alone. It needs more research, more functional studies to really understand whether what we have found has a significance for the disease. And another important point is to have databases that summarize all the mutations that have been found in patients, the functional significance, to help anyone who is doing genetic studies in this disease to dissect the variants that are indeed causative from those that are not causative. So all these tools are very important, the biologist, but also the database, and putting together many data from many centers and many patients.
What exactly is atypical hemolytic uremic syndrome?
This is a rare disease and it affects mostly children, but also adults may have the disease. It is a devastating disease until at least 3 years ago. Most patients either died or developed renal failure and needed dialysis. The disease is characterized essentially and manifest as acute kidney failure and anemia and low platelet counts. These symptoms are due to the fact that patients had an accumulation of platelets and platelet plaques in the kidney, but the kidney is not the only affected organ because these platelet plaques may occur also in heart, in the brain, in lungs, so actually is a multi-system disease, very dramatic. And till 3 to 4 years ago, it was devastating.
What were the prospects for a child diagnosed with atypical hemolytic uremic syndrome about 10 years ago?
10 years ago, 50% of the patients either died or developed end-stage renal disease. A child in dialysis has problem of growing. Of course, the expectancy of life is poor, and also the quality of life, because they have to be in the hospital for 3 days a week to be attached to a machine that clears the blood.
What major developments have changed the outlook for a child born today?
With the discovery that complement was indeed the target for this disease, we were lucky enough that a drug has been developed for another complement-related disease. And this opened the way to try this inhibitor also in atypical HUS. The inhibitor worked and has completely changed the life of the patients. So the mortality is greatly increased. Most patients undergo remission. They do not lose the kidney. So for us is the most important dream, because we started knowing nothing about the disease. The people died, and now there is a cure, and people do not die anymore. We have much more to discover because we do not know everything. But a step forward has been done.
How has the EURenOmics project helped to understand atypical hemolytic uremic syndrome?
When there is a patient with this disease, one of the questions is what is the chance, for instance, for a mother that has the disease to give the disease to the siblings. Not all subjects that carry the mutation develop the disease. And through the work in EURenOmics, we understand that it is important to look at many factors, including other genetic factors that may contribute together with the mutation to cause the disease. So maybe that the mother has the mutation, but it also has other abnormality that together cause the disease. And also the environmental, like drugs, pregnancy, may trigger the disease. And these are very important things. The other gain was to understand the function of the mutation. So thanks to the EURenOmics meeting, to the EURenOmics project, we could express and analyze the function of many mutants, and realize that some mutants do not cause abnormality. Other mutants cause. So this is very important for diagnosis. And also another point was to investigate new complement inhibitors, because of course it will be important to have in the future new drugs that target complement, and that could be more specific than the one that is already commercially available, and hopefully cheaper, because this is a matter also for the healthcare system. This is a very expensive drug.
How is your group involved in helping patients with atypical hemolytic uremic syndrome?
Because this is an acute disease. You need to diagnose it in a few hours because it's very fast inducing kidney destruction. But one of the efforts of the European group within the work package, and particularly from our group, was to develop biological assays to diagnose the disease. So apart from the drug, the diagnosis is important because the drug is very expensive, so you cannot give the drug to everybody, but just to the right person. And what is changed is to be more precise in diagnosis. Our major goal by the moment is to have animal models, and so people, researchers in the work package are working hard on mouse models, and they will be very important for testing new drugs, new complement inhibitors.
How does EURenOmics help to fulfill your dreams?
One of my dreams was to have a group of people working on complement-related disease. There are 5 groups in Europe, including our group, that have been working together since 1995. When we started, we knew nothing from this disease. Now we know much. Not all, but we know much. We were a group that shared a lot of expertise, of reagents and experiments we published together. So the EURenOmics made this group to become a real European group under the target of the European community. And so for me was the finalization of a collaboration that started many years ago. So this is an important dream that EURenOmics has reached.